Welcome back to the Agent to CEO podcast. This is where we turn experience into structure and conversations into frameworks. Every episode is built to give you clarity, standards, and measurable execution, not just ideas. And if you guys are ready to scale with discipline, you can book your call at sevenfigure.com. And man, I am beyond excited to be able to dive in with today's guest. One of my favorite humans on the planet, one of the best guys to share a cigar with, Mr. Gary Reggish. Welcome, brother. I appreciate you carving out the time and jumping in here with us today.
All the time. Too kind, my brother. Too kind. Thank you.
Man, you know, one of the many things that I really admired about you, and you nailed this, I want to say, Gary, probably better than anybody I've ever seen. And I think it's a fault of teams and team leaders and brokerages. They try to cater to everybody. And therefore, you know, it's real hard to excel at anything when you've got, you know, agents at all different stages. And you absolutely nailed the avatar, the value proposition, the promise, how you can deliver on the promise. I'm going to go out on a limb, better than anybody I've ever seen. And so there's so much to take away from that. I don't know if you and I have even talked about like where that even came from, how you even started it, how you landed on this avatar. So I would just love, maybe take us back in time, like when, you know, you settled in, you're like, this is who I am meant to serve, and this is what we're going to build around. Here we go.
Yeah, well, gosh, boy, I haven't thought about that in a long time, but man, blast from the past for sure. I remember it like it was yesterday, truthfully. I was a new agent. I had only been in the business for probably about a year and a half. And the broker of the company that I worked for at the time, he was a team leader, and his focus was in recruiting agents. And I remember the brokerage had 12,000 square feet, and they were just hammering the recruiting game. And I remember his office being loaded. I mean, a line around the corner from agents that needed to get his attention and needed help. And I remember talking to him and saying, gosh, Mark, you know, what's your goal here? Because, you know, you're bringing on new agents like crazy. I said, what's your objective? And he says, well, you know, I want to have about 300 to 350 realtors. I says, out of curiosity, out of 300 to 350 realtors, how many of them do you think would be seasoned realtors that actually meet contract? And he said, probably 100. And I looked at him and I said, you have 12,000 square feet here because you need the space to house them. Now, back then, most realtors came to the office. You know, you didn't have a lot of home office realtors 28 years ago. And I said, you need all this space. Most of them aren't producing. You know, they're hanging out by the coffee cooler, you know, I mean, drinking your coffee, you know, making long distance phone calls, using your toilet paper, right? I mean, it's just crazy to me. Wouldn't it make sense to just go after 100 seasoned agents that all meet contract? And then you can have a space that's only maybe 7,000 square feet and you can cut your overhead. And he goes, I don't know. He goes, but then, you know, you can't say that you're number one. And I said, well, what's more important to you, to be number one as far as the number of agents and the number of transactions, or to be number one in the form of profitability? And that's where we had a real disconnect between the two of us, because I was all about, let's be number one in profitability. I don't care about the bragging rights. You know, I care about the longevity of the business. I care about, you know, growing the company so that at the end of the day, I have something to sell. I have balance, and I have a solid company with agents that aren't just jumping ship left and right.
Where did that, you know, focus on profitability, the business entrepreneur mindset, where did that come from?
So I use it's like most realtors, you know, we don't wake up one day and say, I want to be a realtor, right? Very few people.
Very few.
Yeah, that's not typically their career choice. And it wasn't mine either. I owned an upscale optical boutique and a wholesale optical laboratory. And, you know, I made eyeglasses and I sold the high end. And back in the mid 90s where everybody else's high end capped out at $200 for a pair of frames. My low end started at 200, went up to $5,000 for Cartier frames, gold frames, with diamonds and rubies, and it was all about the bottom line. So I came from a business environment, came from a direction of profitability, and most realtors don't come from profitability. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it is because realtors always have to sell themselves, whether they're competing for a buyer, to choose them over another realtor, or a listing to choose them over another realtor, that, it's all about me and ego and why I'm the best. And that translates into, I have to be number one. And most marketing is, I'm number one in this, and I'm number one in this, and I'm number one in this. And I never see any ads that say I'm number one in profitability.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be the ad to go after. Well, it might be a little harder to recruit people, but from a business standpoint, you're definitely going to be able to plug into those conversations. So Agreed. Coming in with that entrepreneur, mindset, business owner mentality. So what was the shift out of the optical world into the real estate world?
Single malt scotch and cigars, John. You mentioned cigars at the beginning. Single malt scotch and cigars. I was active. With the local Rotary group, the Chamber of Commerce, the Central Business Association. And one day a buddy of mine over single malt scotch and cigars at a nice restaurant, in Northville, Michigan, he was a contractor, and he talked me into going in halves with him to start fixing houses to flip them. And at that time, it was really difficult to find agents that could really dial in on hey, if we paid X for this house and fixed it up, what could we truly sell it for? And, they had ranges, 15, 20 grand. Well, when you're flipping houses back in the 90s, if you have a 15, 20 grand range, if you're off, you could spend 3 months fixing up a house to make $2,000. And after taxes, you're working for beer money. Yeah. So I remember that day too, because I was standing in the middle of my optical boutique, and I was talking to this lady that owned the real estate office right next door to me. And I kind of got on her. I'm like, man, you got to tighten this up. And she got frustrated. She says, doggone it, Gary, why don't you just get your key? Why don't you just get your license? I'll give you the key to the doggone office, and you can get on the computer yourself. And I looked at her and I said, well, what do I need to do that? And the rest was history. After that, I just started making money in real estate, and I started looking sideways at the optical boutique. Yeah,
that's fascinating. And you're spot on. There's so many people that kind of default or back into the industry, then get into the industry with intent, to actually go build something. So obviously that experience and talking to the broker, 350 agents, 100 are going to sell, but we want to be number one. And you're coming from the sense like, this is a business, bro. We got to make profitability. And so that's what we're going to focus on. When did you really start to be like, okay, this is who I want to serve. This is when I want to start building. Kind of talk us through that journey when you're starting to see like under the hood of what's really happening in this industry.
Sure. So, and that's a great question too, because, it really, before I opened up my brokerage, I was really able to see the mentality of most of the realtors. And I was able to zero in pretty quickly on the fact that $2 to $10 million a year producer, those were the agents that were not overworked. They were only closing 2 or 3 deals a month. So they had flexibility of schedule. They could spend time with their kids, be at their kids' ball games and what have you. They weren't overworked, and they were happy. And again, just like, we're always focused on being number one, most brokers have this thought process that a realtor needs to strive to make $300,000, $400,000, $500,000+ a year, $1 million in GCI. And, most people, that's not their goal. Most realtors just want to make a good living, right? I mentioned earlier when you and I talked beforehand that, dental hygienists, work 50, 55 hours a week, making $40,000 to $50,000 a year. So if that dental hygienist can get into this industry and make 6 figures and cut the hours that they're putting in half and be at their kids' games and their school trips and everything else, that's a huge win. That's a huge score. And they're happier because they have more quality of life. Yeah. I also found that those top producers, they have an ego, man, and they're just not happy until they're getting everything, for free, because they feel that they bring credibility to the office. And there is a lot of truth to that, but again, when you take a look at, if you have 100 agents and they're all producing, the number of transactions per realtor becomes much greater. So you can be number one without a doubt with having, an office filled with 100 agents that are just middle of the pack. The top producers have everybody going after them, which just fuels their ego even more so. And most of these brokerages are offering them free. Come work for us for a year free, 2 years free, 3 years free. And all that does is decrease the profitability. And what happens? That agent comes to you and says that, hey, look, I've got these 2 brokerages offering me 2 years free, match it. Otherwise I'm going, so you just don't want to be in that zone. The brand new agent, they're labor intensive. 1 out of every 20 actually make it. That means 19 of them are going to drain your time asking, what do I put on this blank on the purchase agreement? And they're just not going to become successful and yield you any revenues whatsoever. So that's what prompted me to let's focus on this middle tier. And if those agents all know what they're doing, that middle tier, and they're good at what they're doing, they know how to negotiate. They know how to do how to write contracts. They know how to negotiate the home inspection issues. They just need their broker when something really is going south. Well, if I don't have that lineup of brand new agents standing at my door all day long, I have the time to spend with those middle tier agents. And most brokers aren't spending the time with them because their time's all catering to the top producer or catering to the brand new agents. So it's easier to keep that middle tier and grow your company.
What do you say to the people that are the top producers that you have the conversations with that are trying to squeeze you to make it work? You have such longevity in the market. I'm probably a lot of folks know kind of where, who you're built for, but early on, nobody knew, right? And they're pushing your limits. So how do you have those conversations? Because like Gary, I see this every day with, the leaders I get the opportunity to work with that have these mega to enterprise type endeavor teams, and they're trying to cater to all 3 levels, the newbies, the middle of the roads, and the top producers, and they're just getting crushed on their margins on these outside. So how do you handle the conversations with these agents that are top producers or want to be the top producers, or the newbies that they're coming to look for you? How do you handle the conversations with them?
Yeah. So you mean the agents that I have on board
that are coming to you or talking to you? And it may be, like I said, it may be different now because the market probably understands who you are. But early on, when they were, they meet you, hey, Gary, I want to, talk to you about coming on board. I'm a top producer. I have aspirations to grow and build a team. Like, how do you kind of navigate the conversation and be like, hey, we're not built for you, but you'd be better off going here. So like, what's the advice in the conversation look like?
Yeah. So that's a great question too. And it's an easy answer. Right from the beginning, when I would sit down with realtors, when I was just setting the appointment with them, I would let them know that I just want to spend a little bit of time with you. I want to talk to you. I want to see if we'd be a good fit for each other. And, and right out of the box, the top producers are a little bit like, what do you mean if we'd be a good fit for each other? Right. Because, I'm interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing me. And right from the get-go, I would let them know that understand we're not your typical office. I'm not about bringing on as many bodies as I can. So if you're looking for that office, that's all about being the number one office as far as the numbers of agents are concerned. That's not us. That's not what we're all about. It's all about go fish and go on to your next interview, right? That's not who we are. I also let them know that I'm not looking for realtors that are going to step over their mother for a deal. Back then, my number one goal was to have quality. And it was really important to me not to be taken before the board for violations, whether it be ethics or professional standards or lawsuits. And I have to tell you, 27 years later, I'm proud to say that my office has never gone before the board for a grievance or a professional standards violation that we've lost. We've never been engaged in a lawsuit. Okay, 100 agents, 27 years, you find me another office that can fly that flag. So I was really particular. If agents had that reputation of stepping over their mother for a deal and it was all about them, I would just call the interview over. Just let them know we're not going to be a good fit. I mentioned at the beginning that we're meeting to see if we'd be a good fit for each other, and I don't think we are.
Yeah.
And it's all about being honest and truthful. Why waste, wasting their time is wasting my time.
That's so good. And I mean, kudos to you, because that's all leadership. The reason that, you've never had any incidents is 100% back to, your leadership and, your leadership style and creating that culture, that we do the right thing no matter what. And you're right. It goes back to the hiring process, and everything can always be traced back to that. You missed with somebody, it's the hiring process, or you skipped something in the hiring process, but it could always be drilled back down exactly to that. So when you were like kind of going into this process, like, was there any, start to get real clear? Hey, I don't want newbies, because I saw that with a line out the door. So I'm like, I don't want to mess with those individuals. I get to the hire. Now I'm having, commission conversations. I'm, having to hear, they're trying to use me as a negotiation tool to be able to do those things. And so where you kind of settled on your 2 to 10, is that when you started like, okay, what do these people value? What do they need? What do they want? So you start layering out your value proposition. Can you kind of talk through the process? Because this is really, really valuable for folks out there listening, because the goal should be profitability. And what's going to be, the segment of your customer base for you, your customer base, when you put your, broker owner hat on, is your agents. And so how do you go about navigating, what they value, what they need in your value proposition to them?
Yeah. So a lot of that evolved over the years.
Sure.
Right. Because you have different people, different personality, different needs, wants. And the number one thing that I found over time was these agents just want a broker that they can go to that can help them when they need it, because they know how to write a deal. Like I mentioned earlier, they know how to handle a typical transaction, but they want to be able to go in and sit down with a broker and not feel stupid, not feel rushed, and have a broker help them through this. One of the advantages that I've had, I mean, gosh, John, when you and I first started talking, when you were coaching me, I remember as a broker, I was doing 15 million a year in production.
Personal production,
right? Because it was really important for me, for the broker to be in the front lines with the troops and know what they're going through. And I remember my goal was to get up to doing 20 million, and you helped me with that. I mean, I consistently closed about 26 million a year in production now, closed personally. So these agents, really, it's almost like them sitting down with the coach. I mean, they're coming in, they're doing 5 million a year, and they're sitting down with the broker that's doing 26 million a year.
Yeah.
And, so I know what they're going through. I understand how to market to neighborhoods. I understand the farms. I understand negotiations. I understand probate. I understand, petitioning the trustee in a bankruptcy case to release an asset. I get it. So we can have good conversations and help them throughout that process. And they have access to me. My phone never, if they call me today, they're going to hear back today. Unless it's after 8 o'clock at night, they'll hear back the next day. Right. So, accessibility and knowledge has been key.
Yeah. And obviously, especially growing and kind of where you were, I mean, in the trenches with them side by side was so valuable. And even thinking, kind of where we were, because we were kind of in the middle. We didn't know what was going to happen when we got into the 20s. But as we were leading up into that way, I remember you did it might've been the Christmas party, and you really, around your core values and around your value proposition, on the things that, the agents, like you said, like you were talking, the support. There were a handful of things that was kind of the value proposition in your values. And I remember you guys having a party and really leaning in, and they could go get certain drinks made that was around broker support. I don't know if you remember that, but I was like, man.
I do. That was a recruiting event that we did where we had agents. Yeah. That was, gosh, you got a good memory, John. That was a blast.
Yeah. So talk about that, because that one was like one of the best things in just anchoring in our value proposition. Cause that's kind of what we're chatting about is, okay, we got real clear on our person. We know what keeps them up at night. We know what they desire. And then you just put those things in place and went to deliver on, hey, I'm a 2 to 10 guy. I know what they want. I know what they need. I know what they value. I'm not going to give them any extra fluff. I'm going to give them exactly what they're looking for. And that goes back to what you said, right? They're the happiest. They're the most loyalist, and they're not overworked in being able to still have a life and a career. And so, yeah, talk me through that. Cause I just love the themes, to be able to do events, being able to run competitions. And this is just another really cool example.
Yeah, we did. And I'm going to plug in my laptop real quick here because it's running out of juice. But anyway, so we had a recruiting event that we had at the office. We brought in, we had some steel drummers, playing some cool Caribbean music. We had a bar set up, and we did have a bartender create a lot of unique drinks, the one's called cap franchise fees. Another one said, was called broker support. It had, competitive contracts. We just came up with a bunch of unique creative names. And that was really cool to hear agents, because they walk up to the bar and say that, I'd like to have broker support. I'd like to have a franchise fee. So it was all this subliminal, right? Where every time they get in a drink, oh, you know what? I'm going to try competitive contracts this time. And it was it really all was a play on words in a fun way. And we had food and it was a good time. And we coupled that with a competition where, we had our agents invite people that they had transactions with or people that they were friends with. And they would come out and we had the competition where whoever brought the most agents to this party, would win, a prize. Whoever had the most people join the company would win, an even greater prize. Whoever had the most RSVPs, so there were giveaways for this as well. And for the guests that came out, we had about 10 cool gift baskets and, earbuds, just cool stuff that we had where they'd put their business cards in a box, and we'd draw names, and they get to go up to the conference room table and pick a prize. And it was really a fun event. And we capitalized. I mean, we did that. We've done wine tastings. We've done, euchre nights. We've done, and it's always, whatever we do, there's always prizes given away, and especially for people that recruit or that invite agents from other companies. And there's no recruiting that actually goes on that night. It's all about getting to know the group.
Yeah.
So it's low price. Like, look, come on out and see if you like us. Come out and have a good time. Worst case scenario, you're going to get some free food, you're going to get some free alcohol, and you're very likely going to win a prize. So what do you have to lose?
And it was that you nailed it, right? It was the little messaging of who we are behind the scenes, and they had to, order things that said the value that we bring. So like, it's either going to resonate with them because this is what they're valuing, or it's going to repel them, and that's not what they want, which is fine because that does the trick, and it's a filtering system that gets the right people in front of us. So that was really cool, being able to run with that. And the design and the intent behind it is really so cool and so magical.
Yeah. And one thing I want to mention about that, John, is that it really went beyond just having them come out and meet the crew. You see, because my strategy was this: nobody likes to be cold called, and nobody likes to cold call. So if let's say we had only 10 agents, from other companies that came out. Because a lot of people say, yeah, I'll come out, and then they don't, right? They're afraid they're going to be recruited or what have you. But let's say we have 10 people that show up, and I have an opportunity to have some cocktails with them, have some food with them, sit and talk, and just get to know them. No recruiting going on whatsoever. Well, now, guess what? 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, now when I call them, they're picking up the call because we met each other. We started a relationship. Now it's not a cold call anymore. And it's a heck of a lot easier for me to get that appointment and sit down with them and take it to the next step once we've already established a relationship.
It is. It is a relationship game. And, the people how long do agents stay with you?
My attrition rate is incredibly low, incredibly low. So, I mean, out of, we maybe average, losing people, maybe, 1 to 2 a year at best.
Out of 100. Keep in mind, everybody listening, that's only losing 1 or 2 agents out of 100 every year. That's that. And that's just from, seasoning out of the business to transitioning to another market to, you're in Michigan, man, you got some snowbirds, say, hey, Gary, I love you, bro, but I'm going 100%. South. Right. So it's like 1 to 2 a year out of 100 is unheard of.
Yeah. It's not a lot. It's not a lot. And I'll tell you that just in the last 12 months, we have had 5. When I say 5, I mean, so if we have a team of 4 people, okay, we count that as 1. Okay. So we have had 5 agents that have left to go to what they thought were greener pastures that have come back. I mean, and they gave these other places a solid year, some of them 2 years. There's one agent that literally was gone and tried 3 different brokerages over the course of the last 5 years, and she's back. So I really, what I really like is every one of my agents are seasoned experienced agents. So they came to me from another brokerage. So like one particular team came to me from Coldwell Banker and a local Coldwell Banker office. And the name is not relevant. But when she left to go to a different brokerage after coming to me, she then, when she was not happy with that brokerage, she didn't go back to where she started at. She came back to me. So that just shows that we're doing something right, where when they leave, they miss what we have and they come back. So that's probably what I'm the most proud of is we've gotten so many agents back that have left to go other places. And I can't fault them for trying other offices. They buy the hype. Everybody is just telling them, oh, we're better and we're going to double your business. You come here and you're going to make so much more money. And you know what? An agent jumps ship when they're vulnerable. My job is to help them create consistency so they aren't vulnerable.
What does that rhythm look like for you? This stage of your career, like what is that cadence for you as a leader, being able to connect with, the entire brokerage? What does that rhythm, monthly, weekly look like?
Yeah. So you know what? First, you got to, we tend to spend more time at work than we do with our own families, right? And we talk about our families, how communication is so important in our families and staying connected, yet we come to work and it's all business, business, business. Well, it's the same thing. It's our work family. So it's about making sure that we're staying in communication. I mean, you have to carve out time. If an agent's a home office agent, you need to make sure that you're calling them once in a while to check in. Their in-house agent stopping by saying, hey, how you doing? What's going on? You need anything? Is there anything I can help you with? You got any challenges? Staying connected, staying in communication, and you know what? Listening for the pain, okay? Because, the people that are good-spirited people are going to say, yeah, it's good. Everything's good. Yeah, everybody's good. But, after going 3 questions deep, you start to recognize some pain points, and you have to be in tune to that. It's not about going through the motions. You have to really listen to them. You find their pain points. Now, how can you help them with that?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And does that allow you to connect with them when you need to connect with them? Otherwise it's one to many. Do you just kind of like eyeball, like, man, this person's been kind of ghosting for a little bit. Let me reach out. Let me see what's going on. Is that just you from a leadership, just making sure you keep a pulse on what's happening with everybody?
100%. I mean, I make a point to every month get through my whole roster and talk to them. Give them a call, pick up the phone. Go stop by their office. And just talk to them, just catch up. I mean, it's really important, right? Again, we can't just, it's like a listing. You can't list them and leave them, right?
Mhm.
If you're not communicating and following up with your clients and getting feedback, and am I hitting the marks, and is there anything you need? Is there anything that you need us to do that we're not doing, right? It's the same thing. These agents are wealth generators for us. It's really important. You wouldn't buy a stock and not pay attention to it. You just wouldn't do it. So, I mean, this stuff really isn't that hard. It is, but I can respect that it is the hardest, easiest thing to do because we get so wrapped up in day to day that we don't pay attention. And we have to remind ourselves to pay attention. On my desk back at the office, I just have I have these little labels just taped to my desk that say, connection, focus, relationships, just to remind me every day in between my tasks, what's important.
I got mine right here too.
I love it. I love it.
Same way, it's just like we're humans. We need to be reminded more than we need to be told. And there's things that are, core to us, but there's things that we also aspire to, right? That is just these little, reminders, these little nudges to, because we all drift as humans, and, we're all battling with things. And so sometimes we just need little reminders like, okay, got it. Stay the course and, keep moving forward.
100%.
Gary, one of the other things that, other than you really nailing your target, you also got super plugged in, right? Like, you're chasing 20 million in personal production. We're evaluating opening our third office. You've got two. We were evaluating opening a third office. We were increasing headcount, but you also thought it would be a good idea to take on, an RPAC role. And arguably nobody's ever raised more money for RPAC than you. Like they would just wind you up and put you on stage and you would just generate money. You were balancing that as well, plus family, plus everything. So one, I want to lead into an NAR question, but how for you juggling so many hats as a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners do, how do you maintain some level of sanity trying to juggle all the different hats and responsibilities?
Yeah. So I'll tell you, and one thing you left out as president of the Michigan Realtors, the state association. And, but I'll tell you, it's the day before vacation mentality, right? This was like the week before vacation mentality where, man, I'm going out of town next week. I need to get everything done. Need to get my appointments scheduled. Need to get these closings wrapped up. Need to get things on the books, what have you, right? Need to make sure my staff is all together. Well, the reality of it was when I was that busy and I was traveling everywhere, every week was the week before vacation mentality. And whereas I was really nervous about how the heck am I going to handle this? Is production going to slip and what's going to happen? I actually had my best years. I increased production because I was focused. Now what's the message that I walked away with? I was like, God, dummy. How come you just don't focus like this all the time? Why do you have to have something like this going on to force the envelope? And it's because, we get comfortable, we get complacent, right? Hence why on my desk, I told you about that one that I mentioned, focus, right? Yeah. It's all about focus and living life on purpose. So coming in and having your goals and just attacking it. I have on my board up here too, I have my mind maps, that has, what my goal is and every step I need to do in order to get there. The 4 Ds that I have: dump, delegate, defer, and do, because I had to learn that when I was busy. Can't do it all. What am I going to do? What am I going to dump? And just, man, this is not worth anybody's time within my team. What am I going to delegate to somebody else? Right. It's not that hard, but as humans, It's like exercise. We all know we have to do it. I know you're a big marathon guy, man. You
Yeah.
didn't start out that, I just really like running, so I'm going to do it. It didn't happen. There was a motivation there that got you going. And there was a lot of days that you just didn't want to do it, guaranteed.
Right.
So it's the discipline, it's the focus. And
yeah, there it is. And I think that's with anything, right? It's like, there's more days that I don't want to do it than I actually do. And I mean, that's just even, the day to day, even doing what you love, there's still days that, you don't even want to do that as much as you love it. And I love that mentality when it comes to time. Day before vacation mentality, week before vacation mentality. That's how we operate. That's how we think, because you only do the things that absolutely are critical, that matter on the days before vacation. And that's the focus component, right? And I had I think you'll appreciate this story, Gary. I think you probably remember Ryan Smith down in Temple, Texas. He was in Mastermind with us. And so just had the opportunity just to reconnect and working again with Ryan and his team in Temple. And he connected me with one of his mentors, a gentleman in the Fort Worth, Dallas Fort Worth market, Chad Smith. And Chad shared some videos that changed his life back in 2004 with his pastor. And he shared those 4 videos that changed his life. And I can see why after going through them and listening to them. And I've listened to them all a couple times now. But he has this one concept that he talks about, the home run man, and what it takes to round the bases and get home. And he's like, you got to have vision to get to first base, right? If you can't see it, you can't have it. You just talked about it, right? The vision, what we see, what we're in pursuit of, the things that we're in pursuit of. And, with the vision and if you have any type of personal development, right? You invest in yourself in personal development, you're going to figure out a vision. You're going to be able to get to first base.
Yeah.
To your point though, what does it take to get to second? And he said, the only way you get to second base, and he goes, very, very few people. And he's speaking at, to a, men's group in these videos. And he said, very few can get to second base. And you think about that even in baseball, like Hall of Fame, like what you get hit 3 out of 10 pitches, you get on base 3 out of 10 times, you're in the Hall of Fame. So getting to first is vision, but to get to second is your word. It's focus. Like you can't even get to second base without focus. And I'm like, gosh, dang, man, that is so true, right? We hear signal and noise, lock in on where you're trying to go, eliminate the noise. But I think a lot of people miss what your mentality, how you operate. It's that I'm leaving for vacation for a week. Like if it doesn't get done today, it's not getting done. So what has to get done? I have to focus. And then to get to third, which very few people can get to third, but to get to third, you got to have tenacity, right? So even thinking about like when you were pushing through and you were wearing 7, 8, 9 hats at a time, right? Father, husband, business leader, real estate agent, leader, responsible for, raising money for, this industry, also representing the state. Like, I mean, there's 7 hats right there. And, and so you don't do those things at a high level without absolute tenacity to be able to push through.
Right.
But the thing to get home, right? The only way you get home, and he talks about it, is sometimes you just got to have faith. And I think, like even like when you were going through and working together and a lot of unknowns, and we've all experienced it, right? Sometimes we just have to have faith. And it's just a good reminder. But when you were talking about focus, it reminded me of, listening to those conversations.
Love it. That's powerful, man.
So good. So Gary, talk a little bit. I want to kind of sidestep a little bit, but kind of a little bit of talk, because you spent so much time in the leadership, levels in this industry. Like I said, I don't think anybody's ever raised more money than you have for our pack. Like where's the health of the industry? Where do you see us going? What's the trajectory? Obviously you have your crystal ball there in Michigan with you, but
I do.
Where are we heading in this industry?
So, here's my opinion. And with everybody I've talked to and dovetailing on, Lawrence Yun, chief economist for the National Association of Realtors, the market is stable. It has been stable. And, we historically, interest rates around 6% historically are a great market. What's happened is we have so many realtors that got in the business in the last 10 years, they really don't know what a normal market condition is. And, they're really not very good at negotiating. So what I mean by that is how many times were agents telling buyers, you just need to come in strong, come in higher, give them appraisal guarantees, and oh no, don't even think about doing a home inspection because it's not going to happen. You're going to lose this house, right? So don't do it. And if they do a home inspection, it's got to be pass fail. You gotta walk away if you're not happy, which is the craziest thing ever. Because I know if I'm a listing agent, somebody's doing pass fail. If something's legit, I want my sellers to have an opportunity to take care of it, right? Let's hold the deal together. Let's not walk away. And, so we're in a position where we really have to re-educate our realtor and get them back to, the core industry and the core principles of that. But as we still have a shortage of inventory, but houses are starting to sit on the market longer. We're in a real anomaly as far as pricing. What I mean by that is normally we cycle between 3 different market conditions, right? A buyer's market, a seller's market, and a stable market. But we're not in either one of those right now. It's an anomaly because because interest rates have gone up a lot higher than the 2.75%. So buyers are paying $1,000 more a month in interest alone for the same house that they would have bought 4 years ago. So if a house is overpriced or in poor condition, they're just not going to move forward on it. It's going to sit on the market. So it's about, pricing these houses right. But houses in great condition, still priced right, are generating multiple offers. So that is just going to balance out our market a little bit more, causing, prices to stabilize. And we need that. We need that market condition. We're going to have a strong market. First-time home buyers, that younger generation, they're buying houses. They're making that work. It's the older generation that need to downsize, need to get from the colonial to the ranch, that we have to figure out that component. In Michigan, we're working with our legislature on having those elderly people be able to carry their tax base with them so they can buy that next house and keep their taxes the same, as opposed to escalating. In every market condition, John, man, 27, 28 years, I've been through COVID. I've been through 9/11 and anthrax scares. I've been through the blackouts. I've been through the .com, crash. In every market condition, there are people buying and selling houses.
Yep.
And there's only been one time since the Depression that property values took a dive. And that was, 2007. And that was because the banks that don't want to be in our industry dumped all those foreclosures on the market at the same time. Once they learned to sprinkle them, the market started to stabilize. So we're not going to have another market condition like that. It's just, but we are going to have a stable market. We're going to be good to go for at least the next 5 years.
Yeah, I agree with you. And, if we can just kind of lock in, right there at the 5-6 rate, I think we're solid. I love that idea, right? Just to maintain affordability, especially for the largest, generation that has money and owns homes, to be able to, make that maybe that final transition and not get, hammered to death, in the process, I think is really key.
Agreed.
So Gary, as we kind of wrap up, for you kind of at the stage of your career, what's most important? What does winning, mean to you, right now and moving into the future?
Wow. That's a powerful question. Next year, now you start getting, I'm 59 right now. So now's the time, whereas before I was really in growth mindset, and I still am, because you don't want to go backwards. So, but I would say that whereas before I was exclusively growth mindset, now it's more of a balance of growth mindset and I don't want to say exit strategy, but it's all about establishing the consistency and the continuity of the business, so that when that time comes, if it's 10 years down the road, we have an office that, as the older population retires or relocates, we're backfilling with that younger generation of like-minded individuals. So we're not starting all over again. If there's one thing that weighs on my mind a lot is we tend to just go through the motions, not thinking about what that future is going to look like. And in this business, if you're not constantly recruiting, the day's going to come where it's going to be like you're starting a brand new business all over again, because you haven't backfilled and you haven't continued to build. So, it's all about keeping a pulse on how the younger generation is doing real estate. And I think the key is getting that younger generation, as much as we need the older generation. And for years, we've been pushing the older generation to embrace the new way of doing things. That younger generation needs to embrace the old way of doing things as well, because there's, the real estate game hasn't changed. It's still a people business. Technology's changed, but the people business aspect of it hasn't changed.
Yeah. Still trust-based, right?
Yeah.
And that's where the human connection to maintain and consistently build that trust is key. Yeah. Spot on, brother. Well, Gary, I can't thank you enough. Like I said, from the beginning, nobody's nailed it better than you, and staying disciplined to it. I think that's the hard thing, right? Because it's easy to want to sway, especially maybe feeling a little bit of pressure and, want to give a little bit, but you've really held tight to who we are, and most importantly, who we're not. And there's just so many valuable lessons for folks, connecting with you and hearing kind of, your strategy and methodology. There's just so many gold nuggets in there.
Thanks, John. I appreciate it. Keep doing what you're doing, man. You're a superstar.
I
always have been.
Good stuff, man. Gary, I appreciate you. Thank you guys joining in. Make sure you guys get connected with Gary. If you have any other questions, kind of how Gary stepped into that role, reach out to him. Gary Reggish all over social media. And man, that's going to be a wrap, brother. Thank you again so much. And I know we'll have to, for sure, do it again soon.
I appreciate it, John. Thanks for your time. Thanks for what you do.
All right, man. Thank you.
Bye.
See you guys. Bye.